Welcome to Talk Treatises.
Today, we are not just opening a book.
No, we are stepping into the architectural blueprint of Western political philosophy. We are taking on the big one.
The massive, sprawling, and often, controversial inquiry into government, justice, and the human soul itself.
We are talking about Plato's The Republic.
It really is the center of gravity for political thought. I mean, if you've ever wondered why we talk about justice or why we fear tyranny,
or even just debate whether our leaders are actually qualified to lead.
Exactly. You're asking questions that were first written down in Athens, roughly around 375 BC.
And this isn't just some, dry manual on how to run a city council.
Oh, not at all.
This is a dialogue, a drama, and frankly, a psychological thriller at times. It features Socrates, Plato's teacher, as the main speaker.
And the setting is so important. Athens was in a time of upheaval. Traditional morality was kind of crumbling. People were questioning everything.
Yeah, it was an intellectual climate where the old gods were losing their grip. And you had the new sophists arguing that morality was just, a convention.
Right. And into this chaos, the text tries to answer one central burning question. It sounds simple, but it's so hard. What is justice?
And maybe even more important, the book asks, is it better to be a just person than an unjust one?
Even if you suffer for it, even if you get no reward.
That's the mission of this deep dive. We're going to track this argument from a casual dinner party
all the way to the construction of a perfect and maybe totalitarian city.
Down into a dark cave of illusions, and finally to a surprising attack on poetry and art.
So let's get into it. It all starts, as all good philosophical trouble does, at a dinner party.
Socrates is down at the Piraeus, the port of Athens, hanging out with some friends. And the conversation drifts from small talk about old age and wealth to the heavy stuff. They start trying to define justice.
And early on, they cycle through the standard definitions you might expect. Pay your debts, tell the truth.
And do good to your friends and harm your enemies. Which sounds pretty standard for the ancient world, right? Help your tribe hurt the other guys.
Right. But Socrates, being Socrates, just dismantles these immediately. He points out that harming someone actually makes them worse.
Like if you harm a horse, it becomes a worse horse.
Exactly. So how can justice, which is supposed to be a virtue function to make a human being worse, it's a contradiction.
He stumps the room, but then the whole vibe of the conversation just changes completely.
The character Thrasymachus bursts in.
And I love this part, because Thrasymachus isn't just a villain. He's the guy who thinks this whole moralizing conversation is naive nonsense.
He is the ultimate cynic. He's aggressive, he's loud, and he lays down a challenge that still echoes today. He argues, justice is nothing else than the interest of the stronger.
My mate.
Right. Essentially, yes. Thrasymachus argues that every government, democracy, tyranny, whatever, makes laws that benefit themselves. The ruling class sets the rules to keep their power.
And they call those rules justice.
And then they punish anyone who breaks them. So for him, justice is just a fancy word for obeying the people who have the power to crush you.
It's a brutal take, but you hear it all the time today. People arguing that international law is just the will of superpowers or corporate policy is just the will of the CEO.
Thrasymachus is saying the quiet part out loud. And he goes further. He claims the unjust man, the tyrant who takes what he wants, is actually the smartest, happiest man alive.
Because he gets all the rewards. The just man is a sucker. He pays his taxes, follows the rules, and for what?
Exactly. Now, Socrates does manage to talk him down, arguing that ruling is an art, like medicine. A doctor's craft is about healing the patient, not making money.
So a true ruler should focus on benefiting the subject, but I have to say the group isn't really satisfied, and I'm not either. It feels like Socrates won on a technicality.
And Glaucon, who is Plato's brother, he feels the exact same way. He steps up to play the ultimate devil's advocate. He says, okay, Socrates, you silenced Thrasymachus, but you didn't convince us.
Right. He wants to know if justice is good in itself, internally, not just for the reputation of being a good guy.
And to prove how hard this is, Glaucon tells one of the most famous stories in all of philosophy.
The Ring of Gyges.
The original Lord of the Rings.
Literally. So the story goes that a shepherd finds a ring on a corpse in a chasm. He puts it on, and while he's sitting around with the other shepherds, he twists the ring and realizes he's become invisible.
And they start talking about him as if he's just gone.
And what's the first thing he does with this power?
He doesn't go around doing secret acts of kindness, that's for sure. He seduces the queen, kills the king, and takes the throne.
And Glaucon's point here is Well, it's terrifying. He argues that anyone, even the most righteous person you know, would do the exact same thing with that ring.
He says we're only good because we're cowards, we're afraid of the police, or our neighbors judging us. Remove the consequences, give someone total impunity.
And morality just evaporates.
That's the challenge. Glaucon says to Socrates, show me a man who is actually good, but everyone thinks he's a monster. He's tortured, thrown in jail, despised. Show me that that man is happier than the rich, successful tyrant with the ring.
Wow. That is an incredibly high bar. You have to prove that the integrity of your soul is worth more than literally everything else in the world.
So Socrates realizes he can't answer this by looking at one person's soul. It's too small, too hard to see.
So he proposes this method shift. He says, look, if we want to read a text that's written in really small letters,
right,
maybe we should look at a billboard first where it's written big.
The city-soul analogy. This is the structural backbone of the whole work.
Precisely. He decides to build an ideal state, the Callipolis from scratch, in their minds.
If they can define justice in the city, they can find it in the soul.
So they start building, and this city, well, let's just say it's not a liberal democracy. It's very, very strictly layered.
Very strictly. Socrates argues people are born with different aptitudes. He divides them into 3 classes. At the bottom, you have the producers, the bronze and iron class.
Farmers, craftsmen, people driven by necessary appetites.
Right, they provide the material needs. Then above them, the auxiliaries, the silver class.
The spirited defenders, soldiers, police, they're driven by honor and courage.
And at the very top,
the rulers, or guardians, the gold class.
Oh.
These are the few who have the capacity for true wisdom, and they aren't allowed to own private property or anything.
Right, they rule for the good of the whole.
But hold on, this is where modern readers usually pump the brakes. How do you get people to stick to these roles? I mean, who wants to be told, sorry, you're a bronze person, you have to farm forever? It sounds like a rigid caste system.
It is. And to make it stick, Socrates proposes one of the most controversial ideas in the book, the noble lie.
The Phoenician tale.
Socrates explicitly suggests that to keep the city stable, the citizens must be told a myth, that they were all born from the earth and that God mixed different metals into their souls.
Gold for rulers, silver for soldiers, bronze for farmers.
So it's state-sponsored propaganda.
It's a lie designed to keep people in their lane.
Socrates would call it a useful falsehood. He believes that without this myth, you'll get constant envy and social climbing. If you believe your role is ordained by nature and the gods, you accept it. You mind your own business.
And that phrase, minding your own business, that turns out to be his definition of justice.
It is. In this city, justice isn't about rights or laws like we think of them. Justice is harmony. It's when the trader trades, the soldier fights, and the ruler rules, and nobody tries to do someone else's job.
Okay, so the billboard's finished. Now he turns back to the small letters. The individual human soul.
And he says our souls have this exact same 3-part structure.
Correct. First, the rational part. That's the little gold ruler in your head that seeks truth.
Then the spirited part, the emotional ally of reason, the part that feels anger at injustice or pride.
And finally, the appetitive part. All the irrational desires for food, drink, sex, money.
So a just person isn't just someone who follows the law. A just person is someone whose internal city is in order. Reason is driving the car, spirit is riding shotgun helping out, and appetite is in the back seat.
And injustice.
That's a civil war in the soul. It's when your appetite for, say, money or pleasure launches a coup and enslaves your reason. And that, Socrates argues, is misery. Even if you have the ring of Gyges, if your soul is a riot of conflicting desires, you're living in a personal hell.
Okay, so we have the city, we have the soul, but then Socrates drops the biggest bombshell of the entire text, the third wave.
He admits this ideal city sounds impossible and it will never exist unless...
Until philosophers become kings, or kings become philosophers.
Which, let's be honest, sounds ridiculous. When you think of a philosopher, you think of someone in a tweed jacket debating definitions.
Not running armies or economies. The Athenians probably rolled their eyes so hard it hurt.
It was a radical claim. But we have to clarify what he means by philosopher. He doesn't mean a dusty academic. He means a lover of the vision of truth.
Someone who loves the whole of knowledge, not just the appearance of things.
And to explain this, we get the centerpiece of the book, the theory of forms and the famous allegory of the cave.
An image that has haunted Western thought for 2.5 millennia.
So Socrates asks us to imagine prisoners chained inside a deep cave since childhood. They're fixed so they can only look at the back wall.
And behind them, There's a fire, and people are walking by carrying objects, casting shadows on that wall.
So for these prisoners, the shadows are reality. They've never seen anything else. They name the shadows, they argue about them. That's their entire world.
They're living in the world of opinion and illusion.
Correct. Then imagine one prisoner is forcibly dragged up a rough, steep path out of the cave and into the sunlight.
And this isn't some happy aha moment.
Right.
It's physically painful.
It's trauma. The light burns his eyes. He's dazzled. He wants to run back to the shadows because they're comfortable. But slowly, he adjusts. He sees reflections, then objects, and finally, he can look at the sun itself.
Which represents the form of the good, the ultimate truth.
He finally understands that everything in the cave was just a poor copy, a shadow.
But the story doesn't end there, with him just chilling in the sunlight.
No, and this is the ethical core. He has a duty to go back. He must go back down into the darkness to lead the others.
But when he gets back down, his eyes aren't used to the dark anymore. He stumbles. He looks like an idiot to the other prisoners.
This is such a great metaphor for the intellectual in politics. The prisoners don't say, wow, tell us about the sun. They say, look at this guy. He went up and ruined his eyes. He can't even tell which shadow is a horse anymore.
And Socrates says if he tried to free them, they would probably kill him.
Which is, exactly what Athens did to Socrates. It's a warning. Enlightenment is dangerous, and people will fight to keep their illusions.
So the philosopher rules not because he wants to.
No, he rules because the alternative is being ruled by someone worse. He rules out of necessity.
Okay, so we have the rise of the ideal city. But then in the later books, Socrates shows us the fall, the cycle of constitutions.
And this is where it gets frighteningly relevant. It's a slide from the best government to the absolute worst.
It starts with aristocracy rule by the best, but then it slides into democracy rule by the honor-loving soldiers.
Then they start loving money more than honor, and you get oligarchy. The rich rule, the poor suffer, the city splits in two.
And this inequality creates resentment. The poor revolt, and you get democracy.
Now, this is surprising for modern listeners because we value democracy, but Socrates is very critical of it. He sees it as absolute freedom driven by all our appetites.
He describes it as kind of chaos, right? Teachers fear students, fathers fear sons, animals push people off the street because they're so free.
It is, in his view, anarchy, and this excessive freedom creates a vacuum. The people become intoxicated with liberty, but they have no discipline, so they look for a protector.
A charismatic leader who promises to stick it to the elites and restore order.
And that protector eventually becomes the tyrant. The paradox is that excessive freedom leads to excessive slavery.
Which brings us all the way back to Thrasymachus, the tyrant, the man with absolute power. Socrates argues that he's actually the most miserable person alive.
He's a slave to his own lawless desires, paranoia, lust, greed. He can't trust anyone, can't have a friend. His soul is in a state of total civil war.
And Socrates even does this sort of tongue-in-cheek calculation.
He does. He concludes that the philosopher king lives exactly 729 times more pleasantly than the tyrant.
Take that, Thrasymachus. Math wins. But before we wrap up, we have to touch on the ending. Book X, he banishes the poets. Homer, the tragedies, they all have to go.
Yeah, this usually upsets the artist. It connects back to the theory of forms. Socrates says art is mimesis, imitation. If the idea of a bed is the truth, and a physical bed is a copy,
that a painting of a bed is a copy of a copy, it's thrice removed from the truth.
Intellectually, yes, but the bigger danger is emotional. He argues that poetry feeds the irrational part of the soul. It makes us cry and laugh and indulge in emotions that reason should be restraining.
It sounds a lot like the modern debate about algorithms and social media, doesn't it? That the content we consume is designed to trigger outrage and bypass our reason.
That is a very valid way to look at it. He wanted a culture that cultivated reason, not reaction. And for the safety of the just city, the poets are escorted to the border.
Tough crowd. Okay, we have justice, the soul, the K's, and the banished poets. And now, our thought experiment segment.
This is where we take these ancient frameworks and stress test them against modern possibilities.
Scenario 1, the bio-edited republic. Let's look at that noble lie. Socrates wanted people to believe they had gold or silver in their souls. Today, with CRISPR, we can literally do that. Imagine we genetically edit embryos into 3 distinct castes.
Right, so Group A is edited for high IQ and low emotional volatility, the guardians. Group B is edited for high adrenaline, the auxiliaries. Group C for docility.
If we did that, the lie isn't a lie anymore. It's biological fact. So the question is, would this actually create the perfect justice Plato wanted?
It's a terrifying thought. On one hand, Plato might say yes. You've eliminated the friction. The harmony of the state is guaranteed by biology.
But on the other hand, you have completely destroyed human agency. I mean, the justice of the soul requires a struggle reason mastering appetite. If you just genetically remove the appetite, is the guardian virtuous? Or just a robot?
That's the paradox. Perfect order might require the death of moral choice.
Okay, scenario 2. The simulation cave escape. Let's modernize the case. We're in a hyper-realistic computer simulation. The shadows are the digital world. The sun is the server room.
So the philosopher is the hacker. Neo, basically. They hack out, they see the code, they see the truth.
Here's the ethical test. Socrates says the philosopher must return. Does the hacker have a moral obligation to crash the server?
If they crash the server, they free everyone. But in doing so, they destroy the only reality those people have ever known.
Right. If the prisoners are happy with their digital stake, is liberating them actually an act of supreme injustice? Socrates assumes that knowing the truth is always better than a pleasant illusion. But is it?
That's the ultimate red pill question. If the good is the highest value, you pull the plug. But if happiness is the highest value, then the philosopher who returns to save everyone is actually a villain destroying their world.
Please note that these thought experiments are for entertainment and educational purposes only.
We are not advocating for genetic caste systems or server sabotage.
Certainly not. So what does this all mean? We've gone from a dinner party in Athens to the genetic engineering of the future. Plato's Republic challenges us to realize that society is just a reflection of the people in it.
You can have a just world with unjust people. And it forces us to ask, what is ruling us? Are we governed by reason? Or are we run by our appetites, just chasing the next shadow on the wall?
A question for every listener to take with them. Are you ruling your own soul? Or are you a democracy of conflicting appetites just waiting for a tyrant to take over?
That is the question.
Thanks for listening to Talk Treatises.
Until next time.